Then at 9 this morning, live coverage of the U.S. House.
Good morning. It's September the 24th. In a moment, you'll be able to see up close that banner they're hanging in Union Station this morning. It was put up about 4 o'clock this morning. It announces our American President's Life Portraits exhibit, which will go on display next Monday at Union Station. That banner done by Leslie Rhodes here of our staff, Marty Dominguez behind our project. It's a joint project with the White House Historical Society and CSPAN, and we'll talk more about it on Monday. You'll meet the artist who did those portraits you can see there on the banner, Chaz Fagan. But first up this morning, we have Tucker Carlson at our desk for 1 hour. The numbers are there on the screen. You can begin dialing now. We're going to talk a lot about Pat Buchanan. He's all over the news in almost every newspaper. And then Gail Collins will join us from New York for an hour from 8 to 9. She's a columnist for the New York Times, and she has her column in on Fridays. And today she writes about presidential relatives and what they do to presidents over the years, including Billy Carter and others. She's talking a lot about the Rodhams this morning, the two brothers of Hillary Rodham Clinton. On the front page, Tucker Carlson of today's New York Times, Perot is leaning toward Buchanan. Rick Burke, who writes politics, leads it off. Seems like he's got some inside information. Have you read it?
I have. This is actually one of those headlines that I think at an earlier time, back when Pat Buchanan had a sense of irony and humor, back before he started referring to himself in the third person, I think he would have found this headline remarkable in its perversity. Buchanan, Perot, it's just amazing they're mentioned in the same sentence. It really is sort of the, Nelson Mandela, David Duke announced forming a new party or something like that. It's something you never expected to see. Front
page of today's Washington Post, bottom right by Thomas Edsall, Republicans launch attack on Buchanan. World War II comments draw heavy fire. The paragraph is, key Republican and conservative leaders have initiated a full-scale assault on Patrick J. Buchanan in an effort to discredit the renegade candidate who fractured the GOP in 92 and 96 and now threatens to bolt to the to the Reform Party. And they're talking about both John McCain and Elizabeth Dole. McCain going on the attack yesterday on, I guess, no, it was Buchanan that went back, came back against Mr. McCain yesterday from on his Today Show appearance. What do you make of this?
And hard. Well, really, Pat has done the damage to himself. People talk about political consultants and how they're overpaid and useless, and there's always this debate about how many hired guns you should have on a campaign, but the fact is you need them. If Buchanan had advisors he listened to, at some point there would have been a meeting, somebody would have said, I've got an idea, let's kick off the campaign with a debate over World War II, and somebody would have said, that's not a great idea, and he wouldn't have done it, but instead, Pat listened to himself, which works some of the time. It hasn't worked this time.
Now, there's a direct opposite headline in today's Washington Times. They go to two other of the Republican candidates. Forbes Quayle oppose calls to boot Buchanan. Accusations swirl over comments about Hitler.
It's remarkable, actually. You'd think from if you live in Washington anyway, and you've been following this, you'd think it's a freebie for the other candidates to pound on Buchanan. They don't lose anything in doing it. They can each have sort of a mini Sister Soldier moment by denouncing Pat and his extremism, etc. But it's really been remarkable how few, really there's only one McCain who's been willing to do that.
In this Hallow piece, Ralph Hallow, Mr. Forbes is quoted from a telephone call yesterday, was asked if he agreed with Mr. McCain and Mr. Crystal, your leader at the Weekly Standard, that views expressed by Mr. Buchanan in the book are an anathema and that the party would be better off cleansed of Mr. Buchanan and his supporters. No, according to Mr. Forbes, Pat's leaving is another wake-up call to the Republican Party to get a bolder message with more meat on it, said Mr. Forbes. Only with the real message do you win elections.
Oh, please. That may be true, but it depends on what the message is. I don't know if Forbes is suggesting that all the candidates come out and attack American involvement in World War II. I think part of what's going on here is a fear about New Hampshire. Pat, whatever you think about him, did obviously, won New Hampshire in '96, and each of these candidates, with the exception of Bush, is betting his strategies on New Hampshire and doing well there. And so there's a perceived peril, I guess, in coming out against Buchanan. The idea is that you'll alienate New Hampshire voters in doing it. doesn't make much sense to me.
In Tom Etzel's piece, he quotes Elizabeth Dole saying, "I'm appalled by Pat Buchanan's comments. I not only disagree strongly with his analysis of history, I believe his comments are grossly insensitive to those Americans who gave their lives and those veterans who fought and suffered greatly to preserve freedom in the world."
Well, good for her.
Let's go to West Orange, New Jersey this morning. Good morning.
Hello.
You're on the air. Please speak up.
Yes. Well, I'm for Pat Buchanan. I think he's for America first. When you're going out of the book, you're taking a lot of things out of context. All I care about is he's for this country first, and he has good policy. He has a good background. He's been in the government all these years. He knows about it. He knows about communication. Now, why are people against him? Don't we want America first? Why do we want cut down a little bit on the immigration? Isn't that fair? We're always given to other foreign countries. Why can't we take care of our country first? Take care of our workers here first.
Thank you. Charles Krauthammer comes at it from another side. He calls it a populist hypocrite. What do you think of our caller's comments?
Well, I mean, I think everyone would agree with America first in lowercase. I mean, the idea that we're all Americans here and American interests are paramount, at least to Americans. But I think it's America first in capitals, the America first movement of the 30s and 40s that Buchanan's comments remind a lot of people of, and that's what people find creepy.
Mr. Tucker Carlson, staff writer for the Weekly Standard, is originally from La Jolla, California, a Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut graduate in 1991. Here's what Mr. Krauthammer says. After Buchanan's recent performance auctioning for the Reform presidential nomination, however, it is clear that his reputation for principle is an elaborate fraud. This is Charles Krauthammer in today's Washington Post. We go to Eugene, Oregon. Good morning.
Good morning. I have two brief questions. One is I've always wondered the support, like Hillary Clinton, raising support for the Senate in New York. If she decides not to run, what happens to those funds? And along with that question, if I might ask, your presidential candidates, as they begin to drop off one by one, what happens to those monies that they have raised for their support in their campaigns? And also, a quick third question for Tucker. Does he believe that Hillary Clinton will run for the Senate in New York?
Tucker Carlson, thank you.
Well, I mean, as far as I understand, well, the question is mostly academic for a lot of the Republican candidates because a lot of them are in debt and waiting now for federal matching funds in order to pay off their debts they borrowed against anticipated matching funds. As for Mrs. Clinton, I think she said the other day that it would be very unlikely for her to drop out. You know, there are some of us who never stopped feeling sorry for poor Nita Lowey, the congresswoman from New York who was going to run before Mrs. Clinton jumped in. Presumably she could, you know, restart her campaign such as it was if Mrs. Clinton were to drop out, but I can't imagine. It's a little late now for Mrs. Clinton to be dropping out. Brent
Staples in today's New York Times, a lot on books. We start off with the Pat Buchanan book and now the Edmund Morris book. He says the memoir has yet to reach its publication date and is being embargoed by the Rottweilers at Random House, but has already become the most reviled political biography in recent memory. Do you agree?
Well, it's pretty early to be that reviled for a book that isn't even out yet, and there aren't, of course, manuscripts floating around, as is the case with most books. I have to say, Morris's Roosevelt biography was so good, one has to give him the benefit of the doubt. On the other hand, inserting a fictionalized version of yourself into a biography of someone does sound pretty horrifying.
We were not provided here with an advanced copy on it, but we have an advanced cover. That's what the book looks like. And on the cover flap, it says, "I quite understand," the author has remarked, "that readers will have to adjust at first to what amounts to a new biographical style. But the revelations of this style, which derive directly from Ronald Reagan's own way of looking at his life, are, I think, rewarding enough to convince them that one of the most interesting characters in recent American history looms here like a colossus."
I mean, there's something...
Those are the words, by the way, of Edmund Morris.
Yeah, I mean, there's this is sort of a banal point, but true, that there's this trust that develops between reader and author in the course of reading a book. At a certain point, you have to decide you believe what the author is telling you or not. And I think the idea that you're going to have to discern what is fact and what is fiction in this book, it, does rattle you.
Minneapolis for Tucker Carlson. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Brian, first of all, I want to say about your banner, I can't believe you stick Bill Clinton on the same banner as George Washington. That's just a disgrace.
Well, let me explain it because we knew exactly that call would come in about the third call of the morning, that it starts with George Washington, President number 1, and it ends with President number 41 for President number 42, number 41st person, and that's the reason. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, well, it's still sad. Tucker, you work for Bill Kristol, correct?
I do, happily.
Yeah, that guy, he's not a Republican. He's a disgrace. Pat Buchanan just ripped him yesterday on one of the talk shows. And I'm a Pat Buchanan backer, and I think the Republican Party is going to rue the day. We don't need Republicans like you and Bill Kristol. We need Republicans and conservatives like Pat Buchanan. And I think the Republicans are going to rue the day they ever mess with Pat, because when he goes, I go, and a lot of other people go.
Caller, have you read the book?
No, I have not, but I've listened to Pat over the last week, reading the excerpts that people are talking about, and pretty much know what the book's about, because I must have seen him 15 times at all the different shows. And he really tells it like it is. He actually explains, more like all these other idiots who just, take it out of context, like Bill Kristol doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
All right, thanks. Mr. Carlson.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of people who feel like Pat Buchanan represents something important in the Republican Party, and those are the people who should be on the phone to Pat. Call him at home in McLean and say, gee, Pat, stay. But it's Buchanan himself, as you know, who began these noises about going to the Reform Party, and of course went to New York and had lunch with Lenora Fulani, longtime leftist, and in general began this kind of bizarre public unraveling that we've been watching for the past week and a half. It really begins with Pat.
Washington Post pulls out 4 quotes this morning in their piece that was on the front page. Here's from a 1983 newspaper column: less equipped psychologically to stay the course in the brawling area of business, commerce, industry, and the professions. Women are physically unequipped to compete in the worlds of athletics and arms.
I mean, this is the problem, and this is not unique to Pat, but with running for office, when you've spent a lifetime putting your opinions out there, obviously most candidates for any office spend a lot of time trying to cloak their opinions. Pat has a lot of his out there, so quotes like this always revisit him.
Linwood, Washington, you're next.
Hi, I'm a real big fan of Tucker Carlson's and also Pat Buchanan. And Tucker, I think you got to get outside the Beltway, buddy. The American people, and I'm a Reagan Republican. I didn't vote Republican until Ronald Reagan. And I have to tell you that I'm really disappointed in you and Bill Kristol, who I really do hold in high esteem, to attack Pat Buchanan the way he is. And I'm certainly not a Buchanan Brigader or whatever they call him.
Caller, are you an America Firster?
I'm sorry?
Are you an America Firster? That's one of the themes of his book.
Well, Tucker brings up a good point. America First has the connotations of Father, what is it, Coughlin?
Coughlin.
Coughlin, thank you. And the Bundist, but I'm not in that regard. But I am sort of frightened of the way the Clinton administration has given away our sovereignty, just in incremental pieces. One being the national park system, and what has happened with the UN taking over certain of our national parks.
Let's let Tucker Carlson respond, sir.
I think that callers like this are responding to the good parts of Pat's message. I mean, Buchanan has long pointed out that there are authoritarian tendencies in the Clinton administration. I think that's true by any objective measure. The question is Pat Buchanan, the person to carry that message? And I think more and more just witness the events of the last week. I mean, if Pat Buchanan is this, pure conservative, then the question is, why is he going to the Reform Party and making these alliances with discredited figures like Lenora Fulani and Dr. Fred Newman?
A. Scott Berg wrote about the America First movement in his bio here on Lindbergh, and we'll tell you some of the people who are involved. It also is in Pat Buchanan's books, a lot of these names, which will surprise you, who were in that movement back in 1940. Indianapolis, you're on with Tucker Carlson.
Hello?
Yep, you're on the air.
Yes, Tucker, you're too funny. Tongue-in-cheek is my kind of man.
one thing, I do think that banner is just too funny. I'd love to frame it with an appropriate caption on the right. But I would like to say something about farm subsidies, and I know I would never get elected. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana, and lived on a small farm, but, nobody ever subsidized the little drugstore worker, the poor pharmacist, family pharmacy, and CVS, and Rite Aid, and so on. They all went down the tubes, and I'm sorry, but farmers, that's kind of the way it goes. You put up or you shut up. There are some good farmers out there in California that kind of decided to take some specialty crops and did quite well and are doing quite well. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Well, I mean, that's a good point. Nobody has come to the rescue of the pharmacy industry, but I think maybe the pharmacists of America need to organize some sort of benefit concert, pharmacy aid or something, to call attention to their plight. Actually, I mean, I, of course, completely agree with you, and it's interesting that there, as far as I know, really only one candidate who's making that point, one mainstream candidate is making that point again and again, and that's John McCain, who isn't even, as you probably know, even really competing in Iowa because he opposes ethanol subsidies. I mean, that opinion, while it makes sense, does come at a huge political cost, and that's why people don't make it.
Wes Pruden is the editor of the Washington Times, has a headline on his column today. He doesn't write a lot about it, but the headline is a takeoff on a number of presidential candidates and movies. He calls the Buchanan epic a book too far.
It's amazing. I mean, again, I get back to this question of political consultants. I mean, it would only take, one savvy political consultant to have said to Pat Buchanan, gee, Pat, interesting opinions. I respect him. I'm sure you and your friends have, a great time talking about him over beers and all that. But the beginning of a presidential race is probably not the time to reopen this debate.
Altoona, Florida, on the Liberal line. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. Watch you both. I've got a couple of questions for Tucker and one for Brian. Tucker, I watched John Gibson on MSNBC, and he had Pat Buchanan and the famous historian, the one that was before the Clinton things, Ambrose something. I can't remember his full name, but he didn't refute. Yes, sir. He didn't refute anything that Pat Buchanan had to say historically, and I just see him taking him apart on several points, mischaracterizing him. Although I won't vote for him, but the point is.
Let me make sure, because I made a mistake. You're talking about Stephen Ambrose? Was he on with him? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yeah, and he had him on there, but, Stephen Ambrose said, he just came back with, but this and that, but he did not refute one historical fact that Pat had to say. And that was, it seems like he's been mischaracterized, but as far as the Pat Buchanan supporters go, I've seen him calling in here and several other programs, just flooding him for a while, and I suspect there were some rubes out there or some serial callers. Let me get on to my second question. In the Washington Times, it has something on the FBI sniper who shot Mrs. Weaver also at Waco, and the KGB helped AG write the CIA book. Then my question for Brian. Brian, you have several guys on that seem to be internet active and very astute. Is there any way that you could get a counter on these phone calls? Because it seems like some of them, like we had here in Florida, coming from the retirement homes and everything during our past governor's election, who were calling in, and you would have the same ones. And I got a feeling some of these people were calling from the same places, because I've seen them coming in on all the shows, which I do try to watch.
Okay, thanks. It's a continuing problem. Sir?
Well, I mean, I think that's a great point, that it is, on a point-by-point basis, sometimes pretty hard to attack Buchanan on the specific points that he makes. Pat's a sophisticated guy and a smart guy, not someone to be underestimated in any way. Clever and talented, and actually a sort of a delightful person to be with, as people who've been around him know. So Buchanan will say, in this recent book, for instance, he makes the point that America faced no physical threat from Nazi Germany in 1940, and someone will point to that on television, and Pat will make the correct point that Germany didn't have a navy adequate, to threaten America's shores, that Germany wasn't going to invade America. And strictly speaking, that's true. But it's the theme, it's the larger point that Buchanan is making, that perhaps American involvement in World War II was a mistake, that people are upset about, and that I think you can take him to task over, beat him over the head with, because I think it's a wrong and in some ways an odious point.
From A. Scott Berg's book on Lindbergh, the speech was given on August the 4th, 1940 at Soldiers Field in Chicago by Mr. Lindbergh, and here's just a paragraph from it. It's R. Douglas Bob Stewart, Jr., a good-looking, go-getting graduate of Princeton, the son of the first vice president of the Quaker Oats Company, then studying law, had contacted Lindbergh back in November 1939 after Lindbergh's first anti-war address to the nation, along with Potter Stewart, a now deceased Supreme Court Justice, and Sergeant Shriver, a very much alive former vice president. Stewart had been one of 6 Yale students who had invited him to the campus to speak. In the spring of 1940, Stewart and Stewart, there were 2 of them, and 2 other Yale University law students, Eugene Locke of Texas and Gerald R. Ford of Grand Rapids, Michigan, circulated a memograph letter and petition to students and recent graduates of universities throughout the country, quote, to enlist the support of those who feel, as we do, that the policy of the United States should be hemisphere defense rather than European intervention, and who are willing to work for the adoption of that policy. It goes on. There's other names on this sheet, by the way, of people who were supporting this whole point of view, including Chester Bowles and John Foster Dulles and Norman Thomas, who was a socialist candidate.
Just amazing. I had no idea. I mean, it just goes to show that when you're on, on the wrong side of a historical question, and of course it's not always easy to tell how things are going to wind up, and so you do sort of feel sorry for people who come out and take these stands and are later proven so terribly wrong. But when you are on the wrong side, you don't spend the rest of your life advertising it. But I doubt former President Ford or Sergeant Shriver is getting up at speeches these days and saying, I remember back in my America's first days.
Well, here's another just one line. The next day, he accepted the invitation of the America First Committee, telephoning one of its leaders, Kingman Brewster, the student chairman of the Yale News, who would one day become president of the university.
Amazing.
Auburn, New York, you're next. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm reading from the Auburn Citizen, which was, incidentally, was just voted the top newspaper in the state for under 100,000 people. In the city. I'm reading an article by their top columnist, and I can't pronounce his last name, Koofs or something. It's Buchanan can get the U.S. on track. I'd love to read the whole thing to you, but I'll just read you just a little bit towards the bottom. The smear campaign by the Democrats, I hope you let me talk for 1 second after this, too. The smear campaign by the Democrats, Republicans, and the media has already started against Pat. Same campaign that is used against anyone who wants to expose the evils of liberalism. Same smear campaign against anyone who asks why the borders are leaking like sieves with drugs and illegal immigrants. The same smear campaign that asks why the Chinese communists are almost running our foreign policy and why the Democrats want to make the United States just a little state in a 200-state world government. A great article. Can I say about, first of all, William Kristol, he's destroyed that. I see the ratings on that with Kochi, and they're gone downhill because of him. I stopped subscribing to the Weekly Standard because of him. It's ridiculous what they're doing to Buchanan. I think this guy, if people listen to him, they're so scared that in a debate, because Gore can't defend his issues, even though he's a decent debater, Buchanan will eat him up, and Bush is so inexperienced at debating, Buchanan will eat him up. That's what they're all scared of.
Mr. Carlson, do you think he's right?
Well, I think he's right in some sense that a lot of the issues that Pat brings up are legitimate, and I think he's right to say that oftentimes people who bring those issues up are dismissed as racist or nuts. Immigration, for instance, there is a tendency among Republican intellectuals anyway to brand anybody who raises concerns about immigration a nativist or a racist, and that's unfortunate because there should be a debate about immigration. But again, I would just point out that Buchanan maybe isn't the right person to be carrying forward these issues. He is discredited.
I'm going to read some more of this, and to tell the audience, those of you who are Buchanan fans, I'm reading it only to show you what is in the papers here, so you'll understand what people are reading here in town this morning. Mr. Buchanan, of course, will be welcome to give his views here on this network as he has in the past. Here's another quote that they used, a 1977 newspaper column. Though Hitler was indeed racist and anti-Semitic to the core, he was also an individual of great courage. His genius was an intuitive sense of the mushiness, the character flaws, the weakness masquerading as morality that was in the hearts of statesmen who stood in his path. Why do you think they pulled that quote?
I think they pulled it because it's actually not a terribly remarkable quote in taken in context. And I think a lot of things that Pat says are defensible taken individually, but the point is that Pat never stops making remarks like this, some of which seem designed to provoke accusations of anti-Semitism.
Los Angeles, you're next.
Hello.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I'm just getting up here in the morning. Basically, what I'm calling from East Los Angeles, California, and basically everybody around here is a Democrat, and I would normally vote Democratic in the next upcoming election, but to be honest with you, I've been disillusioned by all the candidates up for bid, and that's what it is, a bid. Pat Buchanan, I don't know, for some reason this guy he strikes a chord in me. I think with being Mexican American, I agree with his America First, his views on foreign policy, and the issues about the border. I think he speaks the truth and goes beyond all the BS. And how would you say it? He's not that transparent. Not like the other politicians out there.
As a Mexican American, were you born here or in Mexico?
No, I was born here in East LA.
Okay, yeah. Thanks. Mr. Carlson.
Well, in some ways, Pat is right for the time. I mean, I think this is going to be an election cycle that favors bluntness, that favors candidates who posit themselves as the anti-Clintons, who tell it like it is. And by that measure, Pat's a great candidate. I mean, Pat, agree with him or not, does speak directly and often without euphemism. That's sometimes not good for Pat. But he does, and that appeals to a lot of people. That's appealing.
Ron Schaefer writes, as the first item in the Washington Wire today, the Clintons' mortgage for their New York home is being restructured. Negotiations are underway to revise the terms of a $1.4 million loan for the Westchester County house by reducing or eliminating the role of presidential friend Terry McAuliffe. The loan has been criticized because it was secured by McAuliffe, a Democratic money man who is raising funds for the First Lady's Senate campaign. Nobody is expected to replace McAuliffe, who agreed to deposit $1.3 million with Bankers Trust to back the home loan. One possibility is for the Clintons to make a larger down payment. The first couple began considering a new loan structure after news reports about their arrangement with McAuliffe prompted several mortgage lenders to offer to provide the loan without requiring a personal guarantee. Settlement on the house isn't expected until early November. Jasper, Alabama, you're next. Hello, Jasper. Go ahead, please. Are you there?
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Gary Baldwin.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm from Jasper, Alabama.
Please turn down your television set because you hear yourself coming back at you.
Okay.
Thank you.
My question is I'm a Vietnam vet, and there's this many going on. I mean, I'm having to see doctors now from from the war. I have post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay, we've been put down, dogged, and from the get-go, and we've been fighting Washington, VA, for a long while. And there's as many vets now from Vietnam that are dying from suicide and things in this nature. Where we can't sleep. We have total, just disorders, nerve disorders, and most people look at this as, as nothing to it at all. They want to cast us out and have no more to do with us. And so, what my question is to you, Mr. Tucker, and what do you think Pat Buchanan's views is on this?
Thanks.
I'd think that Pat Buchanan would be very sympathetic to veterans of all kinds. He certainly seems to be. He's irritated a lot of World War II veterans with this book. But to be fair, I mean, he's always made all the right noises about veterans as far as I'm concerned.
Based on the calls we get to this program, you'll be interested in this next note. This is on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. It's only about 6 lines long. Together again. James Riyadi, the Indonesian businessman central to Donorgate, used an economic summit in New Zealand last week to chat with Clinton. The White House won't talk about it, but Indonesians say Riyadi didn't discuss anything, quote, sensitive, unquote, with the president. Memphis, Texas, you're next.
Tucker, who I'd like to talk to. I appreciate him on every show I see him on. But now, I don't know that Perot had anything to do with Clinton being elected twice, but he probably did take more Republican votes than he did Democrat. And with Pat Buchanan going back and forth working for him, working, you know, on his network, is it possible that Pat's being told by his boss who to run and take some votes? I just don't think Pat himself is liberal enough to go that way, but Jane Fonda is.
Thanks.
Well, Buchanan no longer works for CNN, so he's probably no longer under the spell of Jane Fonda. But I do think that Buchanan, if he does run, will take more from Republicans than from Democrats. There was a large percentage, I think, of people who vote for Pat Buchanan are Buchananites. They like Buchanan specifically more than they are Republicans. So that may not be true. And of course, Buchanan is making these overtures toward organized labor. So the idea is that he'll get Reagan Democrats who voted for Clinton for the past 2 elections. I really don't know, but it does seem pretty likely that he'd take more from Bush or whoever the nominee is than he would from the Democrats.
We've been talking a lot about what news has been made from books. The McCain book will be #3 on the New York Times bestseller list Sunday. It'll be #2 the following week. They take these surveys 10 days in advance. You have on Thursday the Dutch, Ronald Reagan, Edmund Morse book in the bookstores. You have this little note today in the Philadelphia or the Baltimore Sun. Governor Jesse Ventura of Minnesota is pondering a political sequel to his best-selling tell-all autobiography, I Ain't Got Time to Bleed. There's a proposal out there. Let's see if it's on the screen. Yeah, there's a proposal out there. If I want to do it, Ventura said Wednesday, I haven't signed anything. I haven't agreed to anything. Ventura said he's waiting until he's inspired to write. Lincolnville, Maine, next. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning. I am so thrilled to be watching your program always. A question for Mr. Carlson. When and where was he born and where has he lived besides inside the Beltway? He mentioned this morning on something that how people think inside the Beltway. That's the way Americans think. I'm sorry, but the majority of Americans do not live inside the Beltway, although I did at one time. And I certainly think that he should think about how people live in the rest of America, because inside the Beltway, they just stop thinking.
Thanks. How long were you with the Arkansas Democrat Gazette?
A little over a year.
In
Little Rock. And I have to say to the caller, I spend a good part of every summer in Maine soaking up the outside the Beltway truths. And
what Washington enclave do you go in Maine?
Actually, we go to a town called Bryant Pond, which is very small.
No other Washingtonians there?
Oh, no, without question, no other Washingtonians there, no.
Well, as you know, half the town moves up to some part of that.
Well, that's true. No, our town was actually the last town in America to have crank telephones, very small and very unfashionable.
How many years have you been on this earth?
30.
How many years of your 30 have you lived here in Washington?
Well, let's see. My wife and I moved here in 1991, and then we left in 1993 for about 1 year and 3 months, and then we came back. So I'm not a math major, but, you know, probably about 7 years.
How many children do you have?
3.
Revere, Massachusetts. Good morning.
Morning. Good morning, Mr. Tucker.
Good morning.
My thoughts this morning on this controversial Pat Buchanan is that in the conservative ranks there is a division. There are neoconservatives and conservatives. Most neoconservatives were one-time liberals. But aside from that, I think what all this furor is all about, where the Republicans are going to bash them and destroy them if they can, the Democrats are going to do the same thing. Pat Buchanan is out to expose the New World Order agenda, and that is what bothers them. They will stop at nothing to destroy him, absolutely nothing. Can I please have your comments, Mr. Tucker?
Sure. I mean, this is part of the sad thing about Pat Buchanan as far as I'm concerned. And just to restate, I mean, Pat does raise issues that I think are important. I mean, I think that, you know, the sovereignty of the American military, et cetera, I mean, these are not just crank issues. But unfortunately, Pat Buchanan raises them in a way that I think is discredited. And when attacked, he can always fall back on the line, well, the tiny cabal that controls American politics doesn't like me because I speak truth to power. This is actually, incidentally, almost verbatim what he said the other day, that I offend the plutocracy, that I'm a wanted man by the inside the Beltway people, and in every sense cast himself as a victim who is sort of a Karen Silkwood of politics, someone who's so truthful that he's being hunted down by the conspiracy that runs Washington. I mean, it's all a bit much. Maybe Pat Buchanan just says things that are kind of kooky, and that's why he's being criticized.
Abe Rosenthal, in his column in today's New York Times, says, speaking with clean clarity, Senator John McCain has become the only Republican presidential candidate to accept and pass a political and moral challenge that faces them all. He said exactly where Pat Buchanan belonged in a Republican Party, out. No Republican running for the nomination ever supported Buchanan's racism and anti-Semitism and the rest of the sickness of soul he tries to deodorize with sprays of populism. Heavens no, says Mr. Rosenthal. But until Senator McCain came along to make things awkward for them, Republicans had a decade of ducking the critical Buchanan question, should he be thrown out, even though it might cost other Republicans some revengeful Buchananite votes in the primaries. Strong?
Very strong. We'd expect no less from A.M. Rosenthal. Yeah, I mean, I just, again, just for the fifth time, I'm just surprised that it's taken Republicans so long to disavow Buchanan, at least this time.
Let's go to Jacksonville, Florida for Tucker Carlson. Good morning.
Good morning, Brian. Good morning, Mr. Carlson.
Good morning.
I subscribe to the Weekly Standard, and I truly enjoy your articles. They make me think a lot, and I think that's what your magazine is designed to do. Don't always agree with you, but I do enjoy reading your versions. I'm calling about the A14 column by Paul Gigot in today's Wall Street Journal. Clinton starts to reward his enablers. It's a story about Mr. Lyons, the Denver attorney who helped Bill and Hillary sweep Whitewater under the carpet back in 1992. Apparently, he's been named to a position on the federal lifetime spot on the federal bench. There were two versions of Whitewater at the time. He was asked to report on the Whitewater situation. There were two copies, a draft report, and he recommended to the Clintons that they submit the one that was not as complete, which also eliminated a lot of the facts that had they come out sooner. I think the American people would have had their ears picking up a little earlier to the scandal and perhaps understood it a little better. Would you like to comment on this, please?
By the way, the Lyons they're talking about is not Gene Lyons, it's James Lyons, a prestigious, he's getting a prestigious lifetime spot on the federal bench, according to Mr. Gigot. He is a Denver attorney who helped Bill and Hillary Clinton, according to Mr. Gigot, sweep Whitewater under the carpet back in '92. At their request, he produced the notorious Lyons report. Have you heard about this?
I haven't, and I am looking forward to sometime around the time I become a grandparent to reading the definitive book on Whitewater that finally explains it in a way I can understand. I mean, I lived in Arkansas while Clinton was president, spent a lot of time trying to figure it out. I await the definitive account. Every Gigot column has something interesting in it, and I'm sure this is a great column. I'll get him to read it.
Ron Schaefer again today in the Wall Street Journal. Clinton's clemency to some Puerto Rican prisoners causes more aftershocks. Like the First Lady, Bradley, meaning Bill Bradley, now opposes the deal for the former FALN members after having said in Puerto Rico last month he supported it. A Bradley spokesman insists, quote, the dynamics changed, unquote, as more information was obtained. The shift cheers Gore's campaign. Gore hasn't expressed a view beyond declining to second-guess Clinton.
Well, I mean, it's poor Clinton. I mean, you sort of feel sorry for him in this case. Everybody, you know, his wife, his vice president tacitly is beating up on this decision he made to release these convicted terrorists. I think it's a decision worth beating up on, but you do feel like, you know, Clinton's sort of being disowned by everyone around him.
Los Angeles for Tucker Carlson. Good morning.
Morning, Brian. Good morning, Tucker.
Good morning.
I do think Pat Buchanan is the being targeted for a smear campaign by, I mean, Rosenthal is a perfect example of Buchanan being kind of stigmatized as anti-Semitic and a racist. He's not. And the failure is for people like Rosenthal and most people in the national media, they can't confront the truth of these issues that he raises, and that's the sad fact of politics in this this day and age.
Mr. Carlson?
Well, actually, I think that Pat has been defended by members of the evil national media everyone refers to. I mean, Pat has a lot of friends, many friends, on television, essentially, who like him personally and have, over the years, shielded him from accusations that he's an anti-Semite. Mike Kinsley, for instance, who spent 6.5 years working alongside him on Crossfire, has said that he doesn't believe Pat is a personal anti-Semite, and that's allowed Buchanan to continue this public life of his. So I think it's probably just the opposite. He's been the beneficiary not of a smear campaign, but of a kind of conspiracy to protect him from himself. And again, I would also say that for the fifth time, that I do think that Buchanan does raise important issues from time to time. It's just that he sullies them by his presence.
Mr. Rosenthal, in his column, goes on to say this: George W. Bush, Steve Forbes, and Dan Quayle have asked him to stay Republican. When I asked Gary Bauer, he denounced Buchanan, but thought it would be better for the Republican conservatives if he stayed in the party. Elizabeth Dole said if Buchanan stayed in the party, it would then decide if it wanted him as its candidate, gourmet duck a la politician. I called Alan Keyes, who said there were no grounds for Buchanan to leave the party and that he was not going to decide who should go or stay. And then he goes on to say we now have a little fresh air, and he goes back to his earlier theme about John McCain.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the fear that the maybe more thoughtful Republican candidates have about Buchanan leaving is that he is aggressively and very articulately pro-life, anti-abortion, and that there aren't many national Republican figures who are articulating an anti-abortion position that makes sense. And Pat really is one of the few left, and so to that limited degree, I think I do think it's a shame that he's leaving. If the sensible, pro-life, sane Pat could stay in the Republican Party, and the loopy, let's have lunch with Lenora Fulani and denounce the Second World War Pat could go to the Reform Party where he belongs, that would be a perfect arrangement. Unfortunately, both those Pats are in the same body.
You wrote about the Lenora Fulani lunch up there, was it the Essex Hotel or someplace like that?
Yes,
in New
the
York?
Essex House Hotel.
Yeah. How did you find out about that?
Oh, just calling around.
Was it a public, had it been public before that?
It had been, parts of it had been public. Actually, I just called Pat Choate, who was the vice presidential nominee of the Reform Party in 1996, running with Ross Perot. The wonderful thing about the Reform Party is you can call its leading lights at home, and they're usually sitting around the den drinking coffee and probably watching C-SPAN, yelling at the TV, and they'll take your call, and they'll tell you everything you want to know. It's wonderful.
Cambridge, Massachusetts, on the Liberal line for Tucker Carlson. Good morning.
Good morning. I have a few comments. I hope the man do leave the Republican Party, so that gives Al Gore a chance to take the office. Because, like you said, the one with the bow tie on, he said that if he does leave, he's going to take a lot of the Republicans, the voters, in which, that gives Al Gore a good chance over George Bush. But, see, I'm not a Republican, and tell you the truth, I can't stand him. But if we had a Republican president, I prefer George W. Bush to be the Republican president, because to me, he doesn't sound like no conservative Republican. I would prefer him in the office than Buchanan.
Caller, let me ask you, though, about yesterday's announcement, and here's the headline in today's Philadelphia Inquirer. Moynihan endorses Bradley, says Gore, quote, can't be elected, unquote. What would you think of Bill Bradley? Do you like him?
See, I don't know him. I only thing I knew, he was a basketball celebrity or something, played basketball. So that's the only thing. I don't even know him. But if I went to the polls, it's either George W. Bush or Al Gore. You know, Buchanan to me is a racist. You know, why would I want to vote for somebody that don't stand up, you know, for the minorities at all? You know, only thing he's good for is his own people, and he bashes the immigrants. You know, I noticed that, you know, he bashes the people on the border, but what about the immigrants in Europe that come here? Illegal immigrants. Don't just bash the Mexicans and stuff. Bash all the immigrants. I mean, European, Africans, the Caribbean, and South America.
Thanks, caller. Mr. Carlson?
Well, 2 points. One, I think it's a good point. You don't often hear Pat, you know, decrying the wave of Irish immigration to New York City, for instance. The Moynihan endorsement of Bradley this morning, it really is an amazing story. You had this dramatic scene yesterday at the Y in New York where Moynihan gets up and endorses Bradley and is asked why, and replies crisply, because Al Gore can't be president. I mean, this is, if you consider what it must be like to have your life's work sort of dismissed out of hand, you know, Brian Lamb's a great guy, but he'll never make it on television. I mean, that is the equivalent of what Moynihan said about Gore, and it really stung, I think.
Here is a picture in today's New York Times as we go to Abington, Maryland. Good morning.
Good morning. Am I on the air?
You are on the air.
I beg your pardon. I wanted to talk about Pat Buchanan. You know, I listen to guys like Tucker and Limbaugh and Geraldo go at Pat, but it often seems like they don't really read his book. His last book is a pretty eloquent defense of what everybody says is an isolationist foreign policy. But that's not really true. It's simply trying to say that we shouldn't be spreading ourselves around too much and we ought to pick our fights. The same thing goes when you're talking about immigration. Everybody's labeling him a racist. But actually, we have no immigration policy in this country. We don't protect our borders. It is a problem. The fact is that Pat's going to put some issues on the table that the Republicans and the Democrats simply don't want to talk about.
Girls?
A lot of that's true. Immigration is a reasonable topic that reasonable people can discuss. The problem, as I've said, is when you have someone like Buchanan discussing it, someone who intentionally, I think, draws criticism to himself as an anti-Semite, who constantly is provoking people to call him names. And I do think Pat does that on purpose. He's not a good spokesman for immigration because he immediately discredits his own side in this. Let me just, I mean, if you said that he wrote an eloquent book defending isolationism. Everything Pat writes or says is eloquent. That's part of why, that may be the essence of why he's succeeded, because he is really a wonderfully effective spokesman for whatever it is that he's pushing. And that makes it all the more a shame when he begins pushing something that's sinister or just plain stupid.
In his current book, he writes about the America Firsters back in 1940. He says former President Hoover was a supporter. This is on page 273. Into the coffers of America First came a $100 check from John F. Kennedy, son of the ambassador to England, with a note, "What you are doing is vital." Kennedy's college roommate Torbert McDonald recalls Jack's being in strong sympathy with America First. Quote, "I can recall distinctly at one stage that Jack thought that people whose motto was America First were correct and that we were just going to get needlessly entangled in what was basically a European war." And once again, he mentions Sergeant Shriver and Potter Stewart and Murray Kempton and Sinclair Lewis and Gore Vidal. And the next call from Dothan, Alabama. Go ahead, please.
Yes. I wanted to tell you, Brian, you have the best program on television, period. And Tucker is one of the brightest writers we have around. I wanted to know from Tucker what he thinks about John McCain. Who would be his vice president were he to get the nomination?
That's a great question. I'm running on McCain this week. Spent a couple weeks ago. I was riding around with him. Wonderful, wonderful candidate to travel with. Famously, the press loves him, and there's a reason, because he's wildly entertaining and fun to be with. Hard to know who would be his vice president if he pulls off his long shot quest to get the nomination. I mean, part of the problem is that McCain at almost every stop is asked, well, would you accept the vice presidential nomination if Bush were to offer it to you? and he makes these wildly disparaging remarks about the vice presidency. I think his line is, the vice president has two duties, and two duties only. One is to inquire daily after the health of the president. The other is to attend the funerals of third world dictators. I mean, you know, after he's beaten up on the office so much, it's hard to see, you know, who would accept the offer from John McCain. It's probably a long way from having to make that choice, though.
There are two front-page articles on Pat Buchanan, one in the Washington Post by Tom Etzel, and then this one in today's New York Times by Rick Burke. And Mr. Burke writes, people close to both men said Mr. Perot and Mr. Buchanan would relish the opportunity to siphon support in the general election from Governor George W. Bush of Texas, should the governor win the Republican nomination. For years, Mr. Buchanan and Mr. Perot have had tempestuous relations with former President George Bush and his family. In the 1992 campaign, President Bush said Mr. Perot had nutty ideas, while Mr. Perot accused Mr. Bush of dispatching a dirty tricks crowd against him. Grumpy old men stick together, said Ronald Kaufman, who was political director in the Bush White House and his close advisor to the former president. Both men have held the Bushes in less than high regard. We go next to Brownsboro, Alabama, for Tucker Carlson. Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, I've got two questions, Brian, and don't cut me off before I get to my second one. But the first one, Tucker, is the lady named Carlson that you appear with on TV, is she related to you?
Just by friendship.
Just by friendship. Well, okay. I've always been curious about that. The second one is, I've been listening, I think, almost to all of the program this morning. I saw Pat Buchanan yesterday on the Today Show, and right at the end of the program, after he had defended his World War II position, he said that the reason that he's been labeled as anti-Semitic is because of his position on the Israeli lobby in this country, and that that people were after him because of that. Would you care to, and in fact he listed an example of what some of the positions that the Israelis are taking in this country. Would you care to comment on that, please?
Well, I mean, you know, it's perfectly valid to question America's relationship with Israel. Israel has a lobby. It's perfectly fair, as far as I'm concerned, to beat up on Israel's lobby. But that's not, I don't think that's the reason that Buchanan is being labeled an anti-Semite. It's this kind of, as I've said, this relentless bringing up topics related to Judaism. I mean, famously, Pat, you know, always beats up on Goldman Sachs, but never Morgan Stanley. I mean, it's really hard to. There is no point at which Pat Buchanan has held a press conference and said, you know, I really don't like the Jews. I think they're a sinister force in America. But I think, and it took me years to come to this position. I mean, I'm not throwing the term anti-Semite around. But you reach a point when you say, well, gee, you know, here's a guy who has gone out of his way to defend Demjanjuk and other accused Nazi war criminals, who's constantly attacked Israel, who's attacked American Jews for supporting Israel unduly, who's implied that American Jews push America into wars in which non-Jews die. There really is, and again, I'm not hysterical on this subject, but I do believe that there is a pattern with Pat Buchanan of needling the Jews. Is that anti-Semitic? Yeah. I mean, after a while, you conclude it is, in some sense, anti-Semitic. I mean, Pat Buchanan obviously has a lot of personal and affectionate relationships with people who are Jewish. So on a personal level, perhaps he's not, but on a different, maybe thematic level, I think he probably is.
Philadelphia Inquirer was the first to report that Richard Rendell was being considered for the Democratic National Committee chairman. I think even in that article they denied that it was going to happen. So here's this morning's Philadelphia Inquirer on the front page. From City Hall to national stage, Richard Rendell standing yesterday here at a Washington hotel where he had a news conference announcing that he is the new chairman of the National Democratic Party. Newark, Delaware, next in the conservative line. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm calling from Newark, Delaware, as you just announced. Tucker, this is the first time I've called, but I do have to say this. I'm a constant reader, enjoyable of the Weekly Standard. I especially enjoy William Crystal, and I enjoy him on Sunday. But I feel like I must defend Mr. Buchanan. He has been a loyal Republican. And I remember many, many times when it was the Jewish lobby who defeated someone who was running because they did not defend enough defense of Israel, sending enough money. This is true. I also do not agree with some of the Republicans' ideas on immigration. I lived in Florida for many years. I saw where they took over Miami. Almost all of the people who were not Cuban almost had to leave the state. I'd like your response, and I'll hang up. Thank you.
Carlson.
Well, I'm not quite sure what to say. Again, I think that people should be allowed to have differing views on immigration. I think people should be allowed to point out the fact that there is an Israeli lobby, and yes, it's powerful, and debate the merits of that, I guess. I don't think there's, strictly speaking, anything wrong with that. But again, I think Pat Buchanan is part of the reason it's so hard to have that conversation, because he discredits it by his presence, because he gives people who watch him carefully the sense that he has another agenda that has to do with personal dislike, and that he believes in conspiracies, and that he believes that the Jews are this sinister, secretly organized force trying to affect American politics. And those aren't discussions I think normal people, sober people, should be having, because I think they're ludicrous.
Forbes magazine came out yesterday. Then Reuters picked up a story, and today it's in the Los Angeles Times. And here it is: Forbes' wealthiest 15 richest Americans, and it starts with Bill Gates, who's worth $85 million, Paul Allen, who's now big in cable television, at $40 million, Warren Buffett, 69 years old, at 31, Stephen Ballmer, 23 billion. These are all billion, by the way, if I was saying million. Michael Dell, 34, 20 billion. Alice Walton, 50. Helen Walton, 80. Jim Walton, 51. John Walton, 53. Robeson Walton, 55. $17 billion each. Gordon Earl Moore, 70 years old, $15 billion. Lawrence Joseph Ellison, 55, $13 billion. Philip Anschutz, 59, $11 billion. And John Warner Kluge, 85, $11 billion. And the last one, another media, Kluge, and then Barbara Cox Anthony, 76. She is the Cox Broadcasting, Cox Newspapers. Over half of those made a lot of their money off the media. What do you think?
I think they're awfully rich.
Do you think that's a good idea?
A good idea to be that rich? I don't know. I'm not against it.
Wayne, New Jersey, on the moderate line. Good morning.
Good morning.
You're on the air.
Oh, I am. I think Buchanan is going to spur on a lot of non-participating voters who have stopped voting. We're tired of two parties that look and act alike and can't tell it like it is, but lie. The Republicans have crowned George W. Bush, and we people keep having to pick between Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Thank you.
Are you, caller, are you still there?
Yes.
Are you worried about any of this that some of the newspapers are worried about, of the anti-Semitism or the America First or any of this stuff?
It's another Washington insider's trick to disqualify anyone who speaks the truth. We don't want the truth out. We'd rather just fool the people.
Okay, thanks. Let's go to Erlanger, Kentucky on the Liberal line for Tucker Carlson. Good morning.
Yes, I'm a Democrat that voted for Mr. Clinton the first time. I did not the second time, but I want to throw something else in the pot that seems to be very much overlooked, and that is the Thompson hearings that have been going on, and the only person that's reporting on it has been O'Reilly on the Fox News.
Two of the Rodham brothers, Hillary Clinton's two younger brothers, got involved in a little trouble over in Georgia, the Republic of Georgia, over a hazelnut business they were starting, and it just kind of started me thinking about all the relatives of presidents over the years and what disasters most of them have run into while their relatives have been in the White House.
You want to name some others?
Well, gee, Nixon's brothers both got into terrible trouble with loans and things like that. I think Lyndon Johnson finally locked his brother up.
Not to investigate anything that led directly to the president. She also handed in her notebook with all of her notes on it, and it was returned to her with 27 pages missing. Now, all of this has been under sworn testimony. No media will pick it up. Mr. O'Reilly, he is outraged at all of the media that, and I am too. We have
absolutely a criminal justice department headed by a incompetent Reno with a criminal president.
Tucker Carlson.
I think it's pretty clear the Justice Department's out of control. Fair enough, and I do think I haven't been following it. Maybe this is a measure of what I'm about to say, which is that I think a lot of people in Washington. I mean, there is this pervasive sense among people I know anyway that boy, the Clinton administration is just rife with scandals, and I can't keep up with it anymore, and the guy's going to be out of office in a year, and let's leave this all to people with more time and book contracts to sort out in the future. There's really no sense that anybody's going to be surprised by another Clinton scandal. So I think reporters just maybe aren't as aggressive about it as they would be in a newer administration.
There's a new columnist at the New York Times. She's written a lot of editorials. She's written books, but now she has a column twice a week, and this is what it looks like. Public Interest is the title. It's Gail Collins, and the headline is, "Yes, we have no hazelnuts, the presidential cash cow." We're going to find out about this after this call, and we say goodbye to Tucker Carlson. Our last call for our guest is Quaker Hill, Connecticut. Good morning. Go ahead, please.
Hi.
Hi.
You talk about Pat Buchanan making mischievous remarks. I haven't heard about his most mischievous activity, and that is he was deep throat during Watergate. I believe it was deep throat because he's been friends of Carl Bernstein since they were kids.
Who do you say was deep throat?
Since Carl Bernstein and he were kids together.
Who was?
Pat Buchanan.
Oh, Pat Buchanan. Gentleman thinks that Pat Buchanan was deep throat.
That's a great theory. Buchanan,
have you ever heard that before?
I haven't. Buchanan grew up, of course, in Chevy Chase, D.C. on Utah Avenue, and Bernstein is from the area also. Maybe. I've never heard that before. Hard to believe that Buchanan, for his famous loyalty to Nixon, would be betraying him to the Washington Post.
What are you writing for Monday?
I'm writing a McCain strategy piece. How does McCain pull it off?
Tucker Carlson of La Jolla and Washington, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We're going to segue to our guest in New York City. Gail Collins is somewhere in Midtown, I assume. Good morning.